Simon and Friends, my confession happened in the summer of 2006 in the Hamptons, the posh part of Long Island, where the likes of Jerry Seinfeld, Puff Daddy, anyone who's anyone in New York has a summer home to escape to in the hot summers. So this is a high-end confession. That's what this is. My boss, Peter, had won a contract for a $9 million house on a part of East Hampton called Georgia Pond. The house was a beautiful piece of property which had been renovated and restored to the new owner's plans. I was part of a crew of Irish carpenters and contractors who were working on the development. There were about 15 of us in total. The new owners kindly let us stay in the home while we worked.
Really?
Really, yes, amazing. And we enjoyed rather a few fun evenings winding down after a long day's work. I think that might have been edited, that bit. None of which is suitable to be read out at tea time and not relevant to the confession I'm about to announce. But boy, did we have a good time. Anyway, the painter in our team was Rory, who wasn't actually a painter, but our boss, Peter, who was always a good talker, convinced the owners he was as good as Leonardo da Vinci himself. Part of Rory's job was to sand down the walls of cedar throughout the house to bring it back to its natural state. We hired 3 extra men to help him with the job, each with an electric sander in hand, and it still took 6 weeks for them to complete the job. That's how big the house was. I mean, that's just like an estate.
They'd have shaky arms.
They would have done, but that's their job, so they're probably super muscly. Yeah. When we were reaching the last few days of work, we needed to arrange to meet with the owner to go through the house with the snag list, noting off any jobs that hadn't been finished, a little bit of extra work here and there. Once this was done, Boss Peter would be paid the last payment of $10,000. Woohoo! The date to go through the snag list was set up, and it would be with me, the foreman, Peter, the boss, Rory, the painter, and Eleanor, the owner of this beautiful pad. The morning of the meeting arrived and Peter picked me up. We were meeting Eleanor and Rory at the house. As we arrived, there was no sign of Rory, so me, Peter and Eleanor carried on walking from room to room, and I wrote down in my notebook everything that needed to be done on the snag list. Halfway through our tour, we turned a corner into the hallway, and Peter and I gasped at the sight in front of us. It looked like a child had picked up a red crayon and scribbled up and down, round and round and all over the beautiful sanded cedar in a section of the wall. It looked terrible. Peter screams, "Who on earth has done that?" I'm obviously not giving it a literal
no,
or doing the voice.
No.
I asked Eleanor if her children could have been the culprits, but Eleanor just laughed and told us to look carefully at the bottom. Look carefully at the bottom.
Oh, you are doing the accent.
Well, that's okay to do that one.
You're not going to do the one.
I'm not going to do the Irish carpenter, am I? Obviously. When we got closer and had a closer look at the wall, we could just see a little matchstick man, the size of basically a matchstick, I suppose, holding a red crayon and looking over his shoulder. And beside this was a signature. Eleanor said, "Do you know who this artist is?" We didn't have a clue. Eleanor then said, "How much do you think I paid for this piece of art?"
What?
And we started to guess what you paid for it. I don't know, $50? No. $100?
No.
Upwards and upwards it went. Eleanor continued to laugh at we guessed $700, $900. To our astonishment, she told us it cost $12,000.
Oh, no.
We continued with the snag list, and there was still no sign of Rory. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? As lunch rolled in, Eleanor was going into town. We were going to meet back in an hour to continue with the snagging. Peter and I were both hungry, so we went out to grab a sandwich. As we pulled back into the driveway, we noticed Rory's pickup. He had turned up. So we took our lunch into the house and we planned to catch up with Rory to find out why he was so late.
Yes,
we opened the first door and we could immediately hear the sound of a sander coming from the corridor.
Oh, I'm sure it'll be fine.
Peter and I looked at each other with open mouths. Rory didn't know about that artwork.
Oh, no.
We both dropped our sandwiches and ran in the direction of Rory and his sander. As we turned the corner, in a cloud of cedar dust, Rory pushed up his protective glasses and said with his strong Irish accent,
Yeah?
Yeah.
"Well, would you look at what some idiot has done to my wall?" Peter ripped the sander power cord from the socket and I fell over in tears, not able to control myself laughing. Rory had wiped off
Oh, no. No.
at least $6,000 worth of this famous scribble. Peter started to explain to Rory who this artist was and how much the fancy scribble had cost. This was art, man! Couldn't you tell it was art? I was then ordered to go to the kids' rooms to look for a red crayon to match to match the red on the wall.
Obviously.
Rory was on lookout for Eleanor, and Peter was now the artist. We'd found the correct crayon, and Peter matched the cut-off points where the artwork had been sanded, and he scribbled up and down to the next line. All he kept thinking of was his final payment, which, funnily enough, was pretty much the same price as this masterpiece. Father Simon, that's how it was. I'd like to ask forgiveness from Eleanor because Peter did such a good job. It was never noticed that the graffiti art had been tampered with, and as soon as Peter got paid, we got out of there. Pretty sharpish. What is it they say about modern art? Asks Shane at the end of his email. I don't know, Shane, what is it that they say about modern art? Anyway, it certainly turned out that you didn't need to pay $10,000, $12,000 for this because Peter the Chippy could have done it for next to nothing. Anyway, what do we learn from that? Let's check in with Sister Bobby, see what she makes of that.
The first discovery, when they turned around the corner, I thought Rory was going to be asleep in the corridor as they came round, you know, kind of maybe he'd been partying the night before and he'd just be in his shorts. That's the first thing. I was really relieved that he wasn't found like that. So I wasn't expecting this. I am sitting on the fence a bit because I understand why you were trying to save Peter's kind of last payment. I do understand the kind of attempt, but I think you should have still come clean. I think you should have done. Because I don't think it's fair on the artist. That's why I think so. So I kind of forgive you.
I think the artist is fine.
No.
So they should have said, I'm sorry, we've sanded off $5,000, $6,000 worth of art.
Yeah, because I reckon if Eleanor went back and said, this has happened, you never know. The artist might come back and said, look, that's really hilarious. I will come back. Because there was no malice, is it? You can understand everyone's position. I think you should have fessed up.
There's a beret involved. I know what Matt's going to say.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, this plays to every prejudice I have about art. And I know that my wife is listening at home and is rolling her eyes about how I'm going to address this. But I mean, number one, if you'd gone back to the artist and said, can you do... And you'd go, no, I don't quite have the muse for my crayon with my stick man anymore. Can I have another $12,000? Yes, I've now got the muse back. Funny how that works. I am going to forgive because there is an argument that isn't art in the eye of the beholder, and so therefore if I choose to sand off half of your $12,000 crayon painting, maybe I'm making it better. Thought about that, Leonardo, etc. So yes, I'm going to forgive.